the Young Turks Mentors.
Our next speaker, Ashish Goel, is what VCs like to call an experiential entrepreneur. So he had a pain point. He couldn't find good branded furniture for a home that he was redoing. So along with his co-founder, he decided to set up Urban Ladder. Now, Urban Ladder in the last few years has emerged as a market leader in what is a somewhat competitive space now. Validation came from Ratan Tata investing some of his personal money into Urban Ladder last year. Ashish says that his objectivity comes from his stint at McKinsey, and his mantra right now for success is to learn from everyone, but to make his own decisions. So we're very delighted to have Ashish join us. He's going to be talking to us about the importance of finding the right solution for your customer.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot to the Young Turks program and Shireen for having us here. I'm going to start with a little bit of personal story. Before that, actually, let me just tell you what I do. I run a company called Urban Ladder. We are, well, arguably the largest furniture online business. We are essentially a consumer brand, which is being built wholly online. I'm going to start with a little bit of personal story. So I moved to Bangalore in 2008. And I was lucky enough to find a fully furnished apartment to stay in for the first 3-4 years. 2011, I finally convinced my wife that life in Bangalore was a far better life than life in Delhi, which is where we belong. And we took our own place 2011, early April we moved in. So we didn't have any furniture because it was a furnished place where we were staying earlier. And obviously we needed some stuff to, you know, like have, keep our sort of cups and plates and sit on and stuff. We bought a dining table from one of the well-known brands, which I shall not name now. You know, furniture is a complex product, as I know better now. The dining table had a crack down the middle about a week later, and one of the chairs broke. Which is all right, I think now. But the bigger problem was they took, you know, it happens with us. They took 6 months to replace that chair and table, and that too after I called in a personal favor with somebody I knew in that company. You know, every sort of 15 days a month, my wife and I, we used to go to that store, and they used to tell us, you know what, we are store X, don't worry about it. I said, you know what, I'm really worrying about it because I have a broken table and a broken chair in my home. But that's all right. So that happened. Then we were looking for a sofa set. Visited a bunch of stores around the city. We are not, well, let's just say, we are conscious, budget conscious people. So we're looking for a sofa set and couldn't find something we liked. I mean, we're budget conscious, but more importantly, we're very, very design conscious. So finally, what happened is, you know, you should come home sometime, any of you. It's quite bizarre. My wife was in the UK visiting her brother, and she called me and said, you know what, he has a sofa set which he's disposing of. Can I ship it back? I was in the middle of a meeting. I said, okay, yeah, sure. And a month later, 2 months later, I was paying a bill for about $1,600 shipping. That sofa came home. It's actually a single couch. He said it's a sofa set. It's a single couch. So now my home is living room is a little funny. There's a large leather couch, and then there's other stuff which is Urban Ladder furniture. It just doesn't add up. You know, it just, but you know, what you do, where you know, couch that your brother-in-law sent has to remain at home forever. So all of this was happening, and you know, my partner Rajiv and I were talking about doing something together. And both of us are very, very product-oriented people. So we are thinking of doing, you know, a product-oriented business, something which is around consumer lines. Sarah mentioned earlier that I was at McKinsey. When I was at McKinsey, my dream was to work in retail and consumer, which I could never do in McKinsey. So then we said, okay, you know what, let's do, I was running a consumer business earlier, which was in the publishing space, Samachhatrikatha. And so we decided to do something together. For a few months we said, you know, it's really, really tough, which it is. But January 2012, we decided to do this business together. We launched in 2012, July. I'm going to talk, you know, we really pride ourselves on being an extremely, extremely consumer-focused business. And this is a theme which is super close to heart. So I'm going to talk about, I've got my notes, so I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to talk about, 5 or 6 themes which are very important when you think about building a business. The first theme is define your customer extremely sharply at the start. And, I'm not going to disagree with Naveen's point earlier about thinking big. But I think, when you're thinking about the consumer, you have to think super, super, super sharp. When we started, we thought about a consumer who was literally, we said, it's people like us. It's people like us at a certain life stage, early 30s, usually married, have bought their own place. What is it that they are looking for? What is their pain? Most of the time, it's, a couple which is both of them are working. So essentially, we said, they are looking for good design. They're looking for super high convenience. Above all, they're looking for trust. So we said, okay, let's configure a product where, we are great on design, we are absolutely off the charts on trust, and we really solve the convenience problem. So the first thing is define your customer sharply. We had like a boatload of stuff defining who was a customer. Our customer was somebody who was already buying online, somebody who had made a few lifestyle purchases online. So we were not talking to the consumer who was absolutely not buying fashion online. We were not trying to take somebody who was not tech savvy and sort of convert them into becoming this tech savvy first and then buying online furniture, right? We were looking at consumers only in urban cities, urban areas of India. So there's a bunch of, define your consumer sharply. Second, configure everything around your solution for the consumer, right? The product has to be for the consumer, the service has to be for the consumer, the customer service center has to be right for the consumer, your website has to be just right for that consumer. That consumer has to come to your website, for example, in our case, and say, okay, this is what I associate with, right? When that consumer calls your helpline number, they should feel this is the kind of customer service I want, right? Everything has to be configured for your consumer. Third, I think which is, a little while back when I was outside, somebody spoke about, one of my competitors, and we really pride ourselves on being a super consumer focused company. And lots of times I'm asked, what is the difference between you and the 5 other people? And because those 5 other people say that they're building a business first and they'll become customer focused later. And you know what? That doesn't work. You cannot. You can try all you want. You cannot change the DNA of an organization. So my point to you is, if you believe that being consumer first is the right answer, build your organization, get every person from the start aligned to the consumer story, right? Not one person in your team can be, not focused on the consumer. So that's, I think, the third point I want to make. Build your organization consumer focused and consumer first. The fourth point I would say is, even as you do this, you have to reiterate in every conversation your passion and your belief of doing the right thing for the consumer. There are lots of times, funnily enough, whenever we raise a round of funding, the typical question that, people ask is, so what new are you going to do? And actually our response is pretty straightforward, that, it's not going to be a lot of new stuff. Largely we're going to sort of, double down and do good work for the consumer, right? Most of our internal communication, our values, it's chefs, CHEFS. The first is customer obsession, right? Everything, every communication, internal, external, is always about consumer for us. That's the fourth point. The fifth point is keep your ear to the ground. Continuously talk to customers. I went, in our company we have a system where everybody goes out for customer deliveries. I was out for deliveries about 13 days back, actually exactly 2 weeks back. And it was just absolutely incredible. What you learn when you engage with your customers, and when I say for myself, I speak for, everybody in our team, super important. That one day led to 4 changes, right? Every day any of our team members goes out for deliveries or, just getting feedback. They're continuously improving. The last point I'll make is, and I have a last point after that, is basis this, be honest with yourself and continuously course correct. I'll tell you a small story. What happened, this was maybe about 6 months after we had launched the business, there was a friend of mine called me and said, you know what, I really like this product on your website, and I'm going to buy that. And there was a balcony set. It's called the Fresco balcony set. And said, you know what, I'm going to buy this product. And the moment she said that, I stopped short for a second and said, you know what, that's not such a good idea. Why don't you buy something else? The reason I said that was because I was not confident of the product. Why would I be selling a product like that, right? Just the wrong answer. Now, we pulled that product back. I'll give you another example. We have had a problem with one of our beds. We've sold maybe about 100, 200 of those pieces, and 2 of those have actually broken, right? When those broke, we discovered that there is a structural problem. We did a recall of all of those beds. Actually, most of those customers would never have realized. Nothing would have happened. For 10 years also, nothing would have happened. But maybe for another 2 of those or 3 of those, something would have happened. We did a recall on all of those beds and set them right. Now, that to me is about course correction all the time. The biggest course correction we did as 40 days into our business, we actually launched all India, because all our competition was doing all India shipping, right? So we said, all right, we are also a venture-backed company. It looks a little silly that, everybody thinks they can do all India. Why can't we, right? Clearly something's got to be wrong with us. So we launched all India, but we said Bangalore will do deliveries ourselves. This is basically the delivery to the customer, final delivery. 40 days into the business, we actually stopped all other cities and focused only on Bangalore with our deliveries, which we are doing. The reason was actually pretty straightforward. The differential experience to the customer was not a 20, 25, 30% difference. It was a 1:10 difference. So we said, let's say no to what arguably would be about 75, 80% of the business, right? We shut down 75, 80% of the business on day 40 of the business, of launching the business. As a venture-backed company, not the easiest decision, best decision of my life. Best, absolutely best decision of our life. 15 days later, we scrambled and opened Delhi and Bombay again. But, that decision of saying we will always do the right thing for the customer first actually sort of, became the cornerstone of what we have built as an organization. That's, I think, what I have to say. The last thing I'll say is, and, I hear this a lot from friends and other entrepreneurs. I don't say it in a bad way about any investors. They're well-intentioned people largely. But do not build a business for investors. It doesn't work. You have to build a business for customers. If you have an investor who says, you know what, let your customer ratings drop, you can recover them later, I would be a little thoughtful about going in with that investor. I would say, sort of, tell your investors, and I think it's a fair thing to say, that we are building this business for the customers. We'll do the right thing for the customers first, and then, of course, it will be the right thing for the investors as well. Fantastic to be here, and look forward to chatting with the rest of you guys later. Thank you.
We may have a question for Ashish from the audience. If nobody else has one, then I'll ask him one. So anybody has a question here for Ashish? Well, I guess I get to do the honors. Sure. You were talking about the perils of bringing the right investor on board. You've just brought Mr. Ratan Tata on board as an investor into the company. What are the challenges of scaling up, but not scaling up because an investor wants you to scale a certain way? And that's perhaps what we're seeing happen with a lot of companies at this point in time, where they're being pushed to do things that they're not ready for. What was the conversation that you had, perhaps, if any, with your investors to say it's not the right time for us to do this at this point in time?
I'm going to respect, everybody's
confidentiality.
Yeah, but I will talk about the conversation. 2 conversations I'd had with Mr. Tata, and they're fantastic, right? The first time I met him, which was around the time we were trying to convince him to invest with us. The conversation, 100% of the conversation revolved around why it was important for us to stay true to our design ethos, and why it was, come what may, we should always push ourselves towards good design. Because that, his point was, that is a need of the hour for the country. Indian homes need to look better. That is the reason you started the business, so don't lose your design ethos. That's the first thing. The second, we try to have, strategy meetings with him every quarter. And the last time, we were debating whether there is merit in us in sort of having all our delivery architecture, delivery supply chain in-house, or whether we should outsource some of that. And his point was, that's actually the real make or break for the customer, especially in India, right? That is the moment of truth where, let's say there is a problem. You are there to solve it. The customer knows that. And his point was, that's something you have to hold on to and own. I'm going to talk about good things.
Okay, we leave the bad for another day. But my final question to you, Ashish, before we let you go. Building a consumer business in India, a consumer-oriented business is separate, but a consumer business in India is not easy. What has been the biggest challenge of trying to build a consumer brand?
Trying to build a consumer... Yeah, I think holding our head among sort of just frankly absolutely euphoric times and being consistent about who we are. That I think, because consumer brands are, to me, more than anything else about consistency. You have to be the same thing for the consumer for years to come. And I think, we started with a certain premise. We said we are about design and trust. And just holding that ethos very, very consistent, right? Saying no to what we believe are, frankly, ugly looking products. Right, when everybody in the world is selling them. And everybody tells you, what, that sells. Why would you not sell it? Easier said than done to say, no, we will not sell it, even if it sells. Right, this is a small example of saying, no, we will not work with third-party logistics providers because they don't do a good job. That may allow me to scale up to 100 cities very, very fast, tomorrow. Right? I think that consistency and sort of just holding the consumer thinking and the brand thinking consistent is, I think, tough, I suppose, yeah.
Well, Ashish, more power to you. And thank you very much for joining us here at the Young Turks Conclave. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
The Young Turks Mentors.